Greetings. Today's video is basically going to be my attempt to explain why it is that Donald Trump has had so much success since he decided to run for president in 2016. And despite winning that election, not winning in 2020, although some would debate that, my sort of overview is that basically Trump is a product of other forces. Trump was able to find success and continues to have a broad base of support among people, among the voter base, basically because of factors that have allowed him to step into the role that he has taken. So I want to talk about, for the people that still haven't figured out or have just convoluted views of why Trump is popular, why it is that Trump was able to become president and still has so much support even today, regardless of what happened in 2020 and what may happen in 2024. So, despite what the mainstream media suggests, there are several reasons why many intelligent and politically aware people chose to support Donald Trump, both during his presidency and continuing today. Several of these reasons were brought into play by modern leftist policies and the lack of any apparent alternative available from the political establishment. So, the first thing that I think it's important to realize is that many Trump supporters don't really even like Trump as a person, but are drawn toward him because of his political viewpoints and positions. Regardless of whether you like his ego or are fond of his personality, he has consistently represented an attempt to resist the establishment and drain the swamp, so to speak, of out-of-touch and corrupt politicians. An idea that I support and agree with is that having an intelligent view on politics involves the realization that voting for someone based on their policies is almost always more important than voting based on a candidate's personality. Many of those with conservative or right-leaning views have figured this out and support Trump for this reason, even if they dislike him on a personal level. The assumption that all of Trump's adherents like everything about Trump is completely false and actually encourages more voters to reject the status quo by characterizing them unfairly. In other words, they consider what Trump has to say, and what they hear in return is, oh, you must love everything about Trump. You must be egotistical the way that he is. Well, that actually encourages those people to say, well, just screw you guys then. I'm going to vote for Trump. And I do think you see that happening, where if people are characterized unfairly as Trump supporters, they're actually more likely to go ahead and support Trump because they're not going to consider the alternative point of view at that point. If that's the response that you're going to get, you're actually more likely to go out and vote for Trump. The mainstream media outlets were another huge factor in why Trump garnered so much support. Their consistent bias in favor of the Obama administration, basically treating him like a rock star the whole time that he was in office, followed by their practical campaigning against Trump as a candidate during the GOP primaries and then up until the general election, actually motivated more people into supporting Trump for the presidency. Many people figured out that if the media and professional politicians hate him so much, Trump might actually represent someone worth supporting as a populist alternative. While the corporate media also successfully indoctrinated many people into an orange man bad mentality, they pushed many of those who could see their lack of objectivity into the Trump camp. So it kind of broke both ways. People that actually think that the media is reporting on truth and is actually engaging in unbiased journalism, they're more likely to hate Trump because they're basically told to hate Trump. But the people that could see through this, they became a lot more likely to support Trump because they can see that the establishment basically hates him. And if you're not part of the establishment, why would you hate him? Why wouldn't you at least consider him as an alternative if the mainstream media hates him so much? Perhaps an even greater reason behind Trump's popularity is the success of the radical left in carrying out its vision in recent years, particularly in relation to its brand of identity politics. Many Trump voters realize that core Western values are simply not consistent with dividing people into supposedly oppressed and oppressor categories that determine someone's societal standing based on having a victim group status, as the left has advocated for increasingly over recent years. This mentality of developing Marxist policies based on cultural attributes definitely galvanized people into opposing the political establishment that endorsed these efforts. This led to a great deal of support for Trump after no better alternative appeared during the Republican primaries, and continues to account for much of the movement behind Trump. This push toward radical policies based on race, gender, sexual identity, and religion, along with some other factors, pulled many people toward Trump when no other candidate emerged to effectively speak out against this narrative. Another reason why voters gravitated toward Trump is the swamp itself, and a general disgust with the direction of the country. This is exemplified by slogans like "Make America Great Again" and the idea of draining the swamp and its intrinsic corruption. Many people who aren't associated with the political left are also tired of the insistence that they agree with the aforementioned victim narrative handed down to them at places like work, school, and in social life by the elite class. Although Trump made many enemies along the way, many people not normally engaged in politics were drawn toward Trump owing to his opposition of the current ruling elites in both major political parties. His unique opposition to political correctness is another example of this happening. To a degree, many people normally apathetic to politics altogether continue to be drawn toward Trump's presence and viewpoints because he opposes a failing status quo on both sides with both major political parties. A related final reason for Trump's success is the fact that he was pitted against Hillary Clinton in 2016, perhaps the greatest exemplar of the swamp one could possibly put forward. The fact that so many people can't stand Hillary and the level of hypocritical corruption that she represents caused many people to consider Trump as the lesser of two evils back in 2016. The Democrats basically learned their lesson by 2020, however, in supporting a weak but less controversial candidate in Joe Biden as their nominee. Even though Biden is also a clear example of the swamp, he is seen as more palatable by politically neutral people, basically people that are not aware of what's going on politically in this country to a large extent as well, and was thus more successful in running against Trump in 2020. So despite all the factors that led to Trump's success in gathering support in 2016, the forces arrayed against him were eventually able to put an end to his presidency for at least the time being, at least the present time, in 2020. So my main point is that the radical divide and conquer strategies on the left essentially created the Trump presidency, along with the other factors that I mentioned already. Trump represented an outlet for those voters frustrated with the identity politics and the oppressed versus oppressor narrative the left has been trying to push onto the population. My secondary conclusion is that should these factors continue to drive those opposing the radical left into political alienation, Trump or someone attempting to emulate Trump will continue to amass a great deal of support. The primary reason why Trump was successful is the environment that the left itself created by alienating large sections of the electorate through its radical policies and attempts to silence any opposition through underhanded tactics, right? If you don't agree with the narrative, we're going to punish you. We can't just have this mutual respect like we did a few decades ago. It's got to be you support this narrative of the oppressed class versus the oppressor class, or we label you every bad name in the book and we treat you like a horrible person and we silence you as much as possible. Those kinds of tactics are exactly the kind of thing that led to Trump's success in 2016 and his potential success in the future. As long as the left continues to use these kinds of methods, it's likely we'll continue to see the potential for an anti-establishment candidate of some variety to emerge as a Republican nominee in future presidential elections, if not Trump himself, given his 2024 campaign announcement. And so, to wrap this video up, this video is basically meant to describe what's happened, but also to more or less talk about what's going to take place in the future if the left continues to push for this narrative the way that it has been. If they want people to support some other person, no matter, or maybe even in some cases because of the way that they differentiate themselves from everybody else, if they want people to essentially support some sort of populist, potentially radical candidate that basically says, I don't go along with all this woke crap, then the left is doing everything that it can to make that happen. They created Trump's presidency. They made it to where he was able to be as successful as he was. And you can argue about how it ended in 2020 with that election. You can argue about whether Trump was a good president or not. That's not even what I'm getting into here. I'm talking about basically cause and effect. If you want to continue to alienate people and to force them to go along with an anti-Western narrative that's basically based on hatred of, well, you're part of this group of people, and unless you apologize all the time for being white or for being male or for not giving a crap about LGBTQ, we're going to punish you for that. If that's the way you're going to do things, you're going to continue to alienate a lot of different voters from a lot of different demographical groups. And basically, if that's what the left wants to do, because they want to divide America and they want to, it's not just the United States either, right? This is just one case study. You could talk about what's happened in the UK and whatnot as well. But if you want to continue to divide people, and if you want to continue to get people to basically not want to be part of your society anymore, and to basically drop out, and to basically stop supporting a system that hates them in a variety of ways just because of who they are, not what they do, not whether they're a good person, but because they refuse to apologize and act like they've done something wrong because of these factors like race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, and so forth, then if the left wants to continue to do that, they're on the right path. But if they actually want to work together and they actually want to build something and they actually want to win hearts and minds, so to speak, then they actually need to change course. And I don't think that they will. I do think that to a large extent the ruling class wants to do this. But you have a lot of people that are sort of caught in between that don't really understand why Trump is successful and have all these very mistaken views on orange man bad, what we call Trump derangement syndrome. And they just assume that all the people that support Trump must love him as a person, more or less. These kinds of people need to be aware that there are legit reasons for supporting Trump, even if you detest the man. And someone is going to fill those shoes as long as the left continues to be radically pushing for these more or less Marxist policies, right? It's just Marxism wrapped up in a different package. It's you're an oppressor now, not because of your socioeconomic status, but because of your race and gender, sexual orientation, religion, and so forth. And so the left has a choice. They can continue to drive people toward Trump or someone like him, whether it's someone like Ron DeSantis in the future instead. That's a different video. I'll probably make a video about what I think may happen in the 2024 election. I have time to make that in the future. But nonetheless, if they want people to continue to be basically push towards someone like Trump, then they're doing everything in their power to make that happen. If it weren't for these radical leftist, media bias type of things going on that marginalize so many people, Trump would never have become president in 2016, in my opinion. They probably could have had Hillary Clinton or someone else like Bernie Sanders in office. But because they've decided to push so hard and to just treat everyone that doesn't agree with their narrative so poorly, someone like Trump has the ability to become president again. And so it's up to the left, and it's up to people that, if you don't like Trump, have legitimate reasons for disagreeing with his policies. Have more moderation with the policies that you support instead of supporting wokeism. And as long as that's not the case, as long as there's this attempt to just marginalize people that don't go along with this extreme narrative, you can believe that there are going to be a lot of people that support Trump. He may or may not be able to win in 2024. Somebody else may be able to essentially try to step into his shoes at some point, whether it's DeSantis or somebody else in the future. But at the same time, if you want this divide and conquer stuff, you're on the right path. You're going to continue, if you support this as a leftist or as someone that believes what the media tells them about Trump and whatnot, you're pushing in the right direction. You're going to continue to push people toward Trump. You're going to continue to create this environment where someone like Trump can have success if you want to have these radical policies, because a lot of people are going to reject that. And the left may still ultimately win in the end, right? That's a different question, because things are still moving in the wrong direction in this society. You can see from the 2022 elections, in my opinion, that a lot of people are not satisfied with the Republican alternatives either in a lot of places. You can see in Pennsylvania and Arizona and Nevada that the Democrats, even with the woke ideology, are still able to carry those states for now. So whether in the end the left can still win with this radical divide and conquer strategy, maybe they can. But if they actually want to work together and they actually want to greatly reduce the chance of someone like Trump himself, or someone that tries to emulate his path, being able to gain the presidency and being able to win elections, then they're doing the wrong thing. And so it's basically up to them. And I encourage people that have this orange man bad mentality and whatnot to basically stop pushing for these radical policies if they don't like the results that they get. But ultimately, the reason that Trump was so successful is because of the radical left. And if the left continues to push the way that they are, there's a decent chance that Trump can get elected in 2024, or there's a chance that somebody else is going to gain that support later on if Trump gets too old in the future and whatnot. It's hard to tell who that will be, but there will be someone that fills those shoes as long as the left continues to have these policies, as long as there's so much division, as long as there's no room for reasonable debate and having an actual political discussion with people on the left anymore, because everything's about your race, gender, sexual orientation, and so forth. You can better believe that someone's going to fill those shoes. Whether they can be ultimately successful or not, I don't know. But if you don't want someone like Trump to have support, you need to have more reasonable viewpoints, and you need to be willing to treat other people with different political points of view fairly. And if you're not going to do that, you can expect that someone like Trump could be successful in the future, whether it's Trump himself or not. There's going to continue to be a push or a sort of gravitation toward that alternative, because a lot of people are just not going to accept the ideas of the radical left without some form of opposition taking place to that. But again, it's up to the left and the people that support the left. Do they want to continue down this division, identity politics, woke path or not? Because if they do, there's a good chance that Trump could either win in 2024, or someone that tries to emulate him could find some success later on. Maybe they will or maybe they won't, but their chances are much greater if the left continues to push this narrative of dividing people and based on these cultural characteristics, instead of actually trying to work together with people that may have different points of view than them.